For people who are super nervous, how do they crush it on the interview for like that dream job? Like, what are the things that they could do so they can come in and just crush it?
Yeah, I mean, there's little basic things like one, research, get to know the brand that you're going to be talking to. So, what is the vibe like? How do they dress? Just even going on their social media pages and seeing what people are wearing at work. Like, you don't need to show up to an interview in a tuxedo or a suit if you're interviewing with Nike.
Mistake. Oh, well, Nike. I would still show up in a suit,
Well,
Amy.
you would,
Yeah.
but I mean that's just your personal brand. But I actually chuckle. I still get to this very day people showing up in like very formal suits for the most basic things, and you really don't have to show up that formal. I think if you're going to be interviewing at like a law firm, or maybe if you're interviewing for a position as a doctor or something like that, where it's a very professional career, like the credentialed careers, sure, show up in a suit. But if you're going to be going to, Pizza Hut or something like that, you don't need to show up in a suit. So I would say do some research, get to know what people are going to be wearing at work during the day, and just show up very similar to them and just assimilate what they're wearing. So one, just prepare, do your research. But two, like if you have an opportunity to know who you're going to be interviewing with, take the time to go on LinkedIn, see if they have a profile, check them out, get to know about them a little bit, because it always helps to set you at ease to be prepared for who you're going to be interviewing with. How long have they been at the company? What's their history? How did they get to where they're at? Because it's always nice to have some demonstration that you've done your research, you've done your homework, you know who you're talking to, and you're prepared. And then prepare some examples of questions. It's easy to go online and search, okay, I'm interviewing for a sales manager job. What are some common sales manager questions that are asked during the interview? There's going to be sample questions and there'll be some sample answers. So you can be prepared. You're probably going to be asked about KPIs. You're probably going to be asked about sales metrics and, how to close a deal and things like that. So be prepared with some of those answers and have them ready to go. A small elevator pitch about yourself. When the interviewer says, tell me a little bit about yourself, what are you going to say? That first 30 seconds to a minute, they're already going to be forming an opinion about you. And so just having basic answers ready to go is going to really knock your interview out of the park.
Yeah, for me it's very tricky because the studio that you and I work at right now is the first time that I ever had like a regular job. I always had like my own company, or I was working for a studio, and it was kind of like you just come in for that one thing, you do that, and then you move on to the next project. So what would you say for people who are used to being like more entrepreneurs and doing their own thing, and now they have to come in into a work setting and they have to come in and interview with an HR person? What are some things that they could do so they don't come across as like either clueless about like structure and how things work, or just sometimes like a bit of too much of a rebel, or someone who like doesn't really want to play with the rules? What advice would you have for people like that?
That's a good question. So I would say there's a perfect balance between both. Because especially in smaller companies, they're going to be in more startup mode, and they're going to want those skills that you're bringing to the table as far as being an entrepreneur, having the scalability to understand how businesses work. There's a fine balance. So you definitely want to show up prepared in terms of knowing your craft, knowing what you're talking about, but dialing it back just a little bit to where you're still coachable, teachable, that you're going to get on board with their project. Having the experience that we have where we're in this startup environment, and I'm interviewing a bunch of people right now that are maybe similarly coming from that space of, when we talk about like video editors and things of that nature that have always been independent contractors, and then we're having them come inside the business. One of my fears is, how long am I going to have you for? Are you going to be here just for a minute? Are you going to stay? Am I going to have you for a year or two or longer? So being able to answer questions like that and being prepared of like, okay, the reason why I'm trying to look in-house is because of X. I'm prepared to stay probably a year, 2 years, 3 years. Or if you're like, I'm kind of done with the entrepreneur life and I just really want to go in-house, cool. But you definitely want to set the company at ease that you're interviewing with, in terms of that you're not going to come in and try to be the boss and you're not coachable, right? But you also want to set them at ease that they're making an investment in bringing you on board, and that's going to be returned, and you're not just a stepping stone for them, if that makes sense. Having somebody be around for a while is important. They want to know that they're going to onboard you and have you, go through the whole onboarding experience, that it's worth their time and energy.
Now, for the person coming in to see if they get hired, I feel like you have so much fear of rejection. You want to get the job. You want to feel like you're good. But sometimes you have to be careful because maybe the company is not even good for you.
True.
So what are some like red flags, if you may, of when I go to interview at that company, what do I need to be looking after so I protect myself as well?
Yeah, that's such an important question. I think this is a mistake that people make in all kinds of relationships, whether it's work relationships, where they work, romantic relationships, etc. Don't try to be something you're not unless you're trying to elevate up, meaning like, you know, the saying, fake it till you make it. I love that for people that are like, I don't have all the skill sets, but I'm prepared to learn them and I'm going to figure it out. That's definitely a great approach. But in the cases of like when you're trying to get in a romantic relationship or a work relationship, you should definitely be honest about what you're looking for, what you want, and what you don't want. It's, you know, sometimes when people are interviewing, they are so worried about doing their best in the interview and, you know, impressing, and they're scared of the rejection that they back themselves into a corner, and you know, it ends up not being the right fit for either parties, and that's just a bigger disaster down the road, which is the same case for romantic relationships, right? Like just be authentic and true about what you want and don't want. So I love it in an interview process where people ask me questions about the culture. What's the culture like? You know, in the studio where we work, you know, there is a question that we ask about, well, are you easily offended? And I think, you know, being honest about that, like, are you sensitive about, you know, certain topics, or are you someone who can stomach everything? Because not every environment is going to be right for you. And so make sure you be clear about what you want and don't want. What are your boundaries? What are you not willing to do? As an example, if I'm a mother and I know I need to go pick up my kids by 5 p.m. and be home, ask questions like that in the interview process. Well, what time, what are the hours? When can I get out? Knowing I have, you know, a life after work that starts at this time, are you going to be able to accommodate for that? Because the answer may be very much yes. You're supported, go do your thing, take your work home, do whatever you need to do. But then there may be companies that are like, absolutely not. You have to be here till 6. Make sure it's the right dynamic for you, you know, be honest about it. So just be true to yourself is all I can say to that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And it's just very difficult when you want to get that job because a lot of people now with the economy and everything, like it's hard to get a job. And then you're trying to convince them that you're good enough. And especially like in the industry that you and I work, like when you're an editor or you're a producer or you're someone in the creative side of things, you want to be good, you want to be wanted, but then you make the mistake of going into a company that doesn't match your culture, doesn't match the things that you want, or the position that they have. Honestly, it's just not going to be good for you. So I understand how difficult that is, but also learning how to say no to the company, I think that gives you a lot of power. Because whether you think about it or not, even if you get rejected, if it's not the right fit, that's actually a good thing. Because even if you go without a job for another 2 weeks or a month, you're going to end up going into the good company that is actually the one where you want to stay longer. Now, you mentioned something before about elevating yourself in the whole fake it till you make it thing. So people are always lying in their resumes. So you as an HR specialist, how do you sift through the BS of people just bloating their resumes and added a bunch of crap in there? How do you know what's true and what's not? And what should people do when they're trying to elevate their resume so it doesn't come across as just flat out lying?
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance in there because, you know, the thing is, we're always all learning all the time. And, you know, especially when you're in, I'll just use my own career as an example, in human resources, there's always more to learn. There's always new laws coming out. There's always new policies being published, and you got to stay up to date, right? So, in terms of, you know, making sure your resume is where it needs to be, one, be 99% honest, right? Like about what you did. But I think where people mess up is they over embellish, and like they'll say, as an example, that they were a director when really they were a director of a company of 25 people and it was a small entity. And then they'll apply for a director job at a company like Nike or Amazon, which is very different in terms of dollar amount that you were in charge of. Your P&L statements were much different. Your budgets were a lot larger. The people you're managing is a lot more dramatic. So you need to be honest about the numbers. So what is the size of the company you were in charge of? What is the budget you were in charge of? You know, what were you directly responsible for? Having actual data on your resume is so helpful. So when someone tells me that they were a director or a manager or something like that in the interview, you know, if their resume is not clear about exactly what they did and what the numbers were, those are the questions that I'll ask. So tell me about your team size. Tell me what you specifically were responsible for. Okay, tell me about a project that you did and what directly did you manage. Tell me about your company. So I'm asking about the place that they worked, who they reported to, et cetera. So asking those onion layer peeling questions tells a lot about their abilities, their skill level, their experience, all of that, to help me decide if the position I'm hiring for is actually going to be something they can manage. Because, I'm doing them a favor just as much as the business that I'm hiring for a favor as well, to make sure I'm setting them up for success. Because the worst thing is for all parties involved, including the candidate, to put them in the wrong role that they're going to fail at because simply they just weren't prepared for it or ready for it. Sometimes we get really lucky where there's people that are overqualified for a job, and that can be sometimes a little bit daunting too for that person if we're not, if they thought the role was much more than it was. But it could also work out really, really well for the company, especially for startups where you need someone that's just a total slam dunk all-star player to help build an organization up from the ground. So, those conversations, the interview experience that you have with a candidate, it's that magical 30 minutes where you can dive in with someone and really get to understand if what they said on paper actually matches what they did in real life.
Yeah. Now, how can someone come into that interview and negotiate and try to get more than the amount? Like, is that possible? And what are some good tactics and techniques to be able to negotiate up and actually like maybe get a better deal than what you came in with?
In terms of their salary ranges.
Yeah.
So things are getting really crazy in the salary range market right now. So I'll give you an example here in California, and the same is true for Colorado and New York, and a lot of other states are following suit. The laws are changing where the salary ranges now have to be published publicly. So when you go on a job board and you're looking for a job, you can actually see what the range of the compensation is. And there's typically a range that's usually $5,000 to $10,000 to $20,000 up and down. The best way to show up to get the maximum amount of that range that the company is able to offer is to make sure that when you go to apply for the position, take the 10 or 15 minutes it takes to review the job description thoroughly. Take the keywords out of that job description, as long as they match your honest experience, put them on the resume, because you want to be, the maximum of what that is, but make sure obviously you need to have your experience be reflective of that. But small word changes, such as if they're using language like, manages a P&L statement, and you've done that, make sure you put that on your resume so you're matching the skill set. So that's step one. Then two, do the research of the position of the company, that you can actually do the job and you can speak and walk the walk and all of those things. If they're using software that they've listed on must have experience with, Asana, Monday, Slack, whatever it is, even if you haven't had that experience, most of that stuff has demos, YouTube tutorials. Go learn that stuff really quickly. It really doesn't take much to figure out a new software or get your hands in there, get some experience. So get those experiences that they're listing in the requirements section. Maybe you need to take a short course on an Excel spreadsheet configuration, macro management, whatever it is, but go and get the experience that they're asking for. It doesn't take much time to do this, and make sure you're able to intelligently speak to that during the interview. And then if you get an interview, when you're in the interview, knock it out of the park that you have good experience, you're able to speak to exactly what's in that job description. I always recommend before you have your interview, reread that job description to make sure you're able to talk to those points that are on the job description, that you understand it, and ask questions. When you're in that interview and you're talking to the recruiter, you're talking to the hiring manager, ask detail-oriented questions about the company, about the position, how you can add value to the company. So what does my first 30 days look like in the role? What does success look like in this position? What are the key things that you want me to focus on to be successful in helping you guys move the needle on whatever the project is? These are really, really simple but great effective questions that make you come across as more executive and polished in the interview process. Doing all of these little things will help set you up for a better offer. And when it comes to the negotiation time, don't be afraid to ask for more money. If they're saying, even though the range is posted 85 to 100,000, we'd like to offer you a rate of 85 or 90. Say, well, the range is posted to 100, and I feel my experience is in line with the expectations of this role. Are you guys open to potentially giving me an offer of X amount? Whether that's 90 or 95 or even 100. Don't be afraid to ask for it, because you ask for it, most of the time they're going to turn around, talk to their internal team, come back to you and give you the offer that you're asking for. So definitely push back at least once.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. And if you're able to make that connection between, hey, you're asking for this amount, what does that look like? What like key metrics do I need to hit? What things do I need to accomplish? What project is like front of the line right now that if we do that, then I'll be a success for you? Because like in my experience, like as a producer, when we're looking for editors and like people in our creative team, I I'm okay overpaying, and I have gone up to like the president of the studio and be like, he's really good with this guy, even if he's gonna be 10 or 15K higher, just because of the quality of that person, we're gonna save ourselves so much more time later. But if the person is not able to create a direct correlation in the storytelling that they're saying in the interview between the goal and the metric of the company and what they can actually do and their experience and how they would go after that, that's where the disconnection is. And I really like what you were saying about the questions, because when you're asking questions, you're actually showing the person that you have thought through the actual key things that you need to understand to go into the job and actually do your job. Now, some of the times people are so nervous that they cannot even like think. And especially I want you to touch on when you're coming right out of college and you're used to this very, academic way of you come in, you talk to the professor is going to tell you A, B, and C, and then you think about it and you have a polite response. How can newly graduates go into a corporate setting where you only have 30 minutes, you have to impress me, and you have to do really well? And just by like when the kid walks in, if they're young and you see they're so green, it's almost like you already can tell that they're so inexperienced. So how can that person coming in get over that fear of the rejection and everything else that everyone has to deal with, and on top of that, the fear of like, I'm not good enough, I don't have the experience? What can they do so they can crush it on that interview?
Yeah, I love these mindset questions because here's the thing, like it's all about confidence. Even if you're brand new out of school, it doesn't matter if you're 17 or 20 or 30 or 40, it's about confidence and just being prepared. There is nothing better than practicing and preparing and writing down questions that you want to ask in the interview. As a candidate, if you do your homework and you go on Google, Google is a powerful resource. Chat GPT, powerful resource. What are the best questions for me to answer or ask in an interview? Insert the job title that you're interviewing for, and match your skill level to where you're really at. So if you're authentically just graduating from college, your internship level, your entry level, right? You should be looking at positions that are 0 to 3 years of experience, right? And take advantage of internships while you're in college if you can. But practice. There's so many resources online in terms of interviewing tips. Top 10 things you should think about when you're about to do an interview. Look at that stuff. There's a lot of really great self-help stuff that are out there. Muse.com is a great website that'll tell you where to go and how to show up and how to dress and what questions to ask and how to present yourself. But prepare an elevator pitch. Tell me about yourself. What's got you interested in this role? Be prepared to answer that. Well, I'm interested in this role because I'm really passionate about what you're doing as a company. And my career goal is to be, fill in the blank. And I know this position will help me reach that goal over time. I'm hungry. I'm eager to learn. I'm teachable. I'm coachable. Here's all the things that I've done to prepare for this interview, right? So do the homework. It takes a little bit of effort and it goes a long way. So confidence, just know that you can do it, research, and show up prepared.
Now, how much of in this stage of graduating and going into the jobs and the companies, how much of your education and degrees and all of that really matters? Like I come from like film and production where I went to film school, I graduated with my film degree, and then I ended up just as an office PA going to the grocery store to buy stuff for the production office and doing coffee runs and stuff like that. Nobody cared about my degree. I had like good grades and all, but it was just a friend that said, "Hey, we need you here." And for my career path, that's how you actually learn. But then for other professional stuff, does it really matter that you have the degree from this university and that university? Or like, how do you see that when you're looking at someone's resume and taking the interview?
Good question. I look at this through a couple different lenses. So the first lens is this a professional trade? As in, is it a lawyer? Is it a doctor, right? Like, are they things that require certification where you have to have the degree? If that's the case, then yes, it does matter, of course, that you went to school. And for a lot of places, it does matter where you went, what your GPA was, et cetera. I'll give you another example that doesn't necessarily require a certification or a license of any kind, like an accountant or a CFO or somebody that's going to be doing tax, right? Like if you're doing something that's very specifically numbers focused or has to do with money, you probably need to have some sort of degree behind you just to get hired or even to get an interview. However, I will also champion heavily. I would much rather hire for all of the other jobs out there someone that has busted their booty. They did an internship. They did it the hard way, right? They really have kind of done it through experience than hiring somebody fresh out of college that has zero experience. They never even worked at Pizza Hut, right? They have never worked a day in their life. Mom and dad paid for all of their college. I'm going to want to hire the person that worked 3 jobs to put themselves through school and got the internships and worked really, really hard, right? So it does not matter for most jobs, but there's definitely, of course, some jobs that it does matter. I mean, look at, some of the top CEOs in the world didn't even go to college. So I don't think a degree necessarily matters for most things, but of course, where it matters, it does matter.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious to get your thoughts on someone that is already working in a company. How can they level up within that same company? Because sometimes you see that you're in this department and it's not where you want to see yourself in like 3 to 5 years, or you're not making the amount of money that you want, or like it's just not what you thought it was going to be. And now you want to make either a horizontal move or a vertical move. What's the best way to go around that strategy to make that transition?
Yeah. So performance managing yourself, meaning like one, show up and do the job well that you've been hired to do. So if you're working currently in marketing and you really want to get into production, make sure you're crushing your job in marketing first and foremost, because the worst thing you can do is fail at your job, suck at it because you don't really want to do it and you're not that interested, because then your manager's not going to be supportive of what I'm about to say next. So if you're crushing your job and you're doing a really great job in everything that you're doing, in your conversations that you're having with your manager, either in your one-on-ones, your performance reviews, whatever, say, hey, listen, I really love my job. I love it here and I love what I do. However, I'm very interested in potentially doing some sort of like job shadowing or getting to understand production a little bit more. Do you mind if I talk to one of the managers over there and just get a sense of if it's something I might be interested to potentially do one day? Most of the time, that manager is going to be very supportive and it will help you in that career.
Do you think so? Don't you
Yeah.
feel like that manager is going to be like, yo, if you go to the other department, that means that I don't have you in this department?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I fully acknowledge there are bad managers out there. There are. And if you're in a situation where you have a bad manager that is not supportive of your career growth and your career trajectory, that's a whole different other question and topic. And I can address that in a minute if you want. But most of the time, if you get a good manager or even someone who's just genuinely interested in helping you, be successful, again, crush your job first, because you don't want to create an enemy out of your manager. This is the way to be most successful. Crush your job that you're already in, but definitely have a coffee chat. But you need to get your manager's blessing first. You never want to go behind their back to do this first. Talk to your manager. But once you're done talking to your manager about it and you have their blessing, go over to the production department and say, I'm just using that as an example, but go over to the other department that you're interested in and say, hey, I've been really interested in what you guys are doing over here. Do you mind if I do a stretch assignment or a job shadowing or a coffee chat or something to get to know this a little bit more? Once you start dabbling your feet in getting to know that team, getting to know what they're doing, et cetera, if there's jobs that are coming open, would you mind if I potentially apply for this job? Or do you mind if I do a stretch assignment? A stretch assignment could be something like you're still doing your marketing job, but that you maybe take on an hour or two a day or a week or whatever to start training in and job shadowing in. So I'm always a big fan of coffee chats. Have those initial conversations, see if there's an opportunity for you to job shadow or train in or, take on extra assignments. We actually have somebody at the place that we work now that is doing multiple things for like 3 different departments. And, they're doing copywriting over here. They're doing community management over here. They're doing all of these different things. And that's a really, really good way to stretch yourself in your skill and get to learn more things. And then again, when there's a job opportunity that opens, well, now you've developed a relationship with that team, you've job shadowed, you've shown your interest, and you can slip your way over into that team. So that's just one way of going about it. The other way is, of course, the independent study outside of work. So, oh, you're interested in production, as an example. Okay, well, did you take night classes? Did you do some online research? Did you watch YouTube videos? Did you sign up for a local club that does it, right? You can do your independent study as well. So making the transition's not hard, but it does take investment in your time and, education and creating relationships to help find someone who's going to help you bridge that gap to go over to the next department. It's very possible.
Now, in this case, how can you find out in a proper way what that person in the other job is actually making? Because sometimes, like with, I don't know, with the laws and everything, like you're not supposed to ask people how much they make, and like you're not supposed to know like everyone's salaries and all that. So what would happen if I'm in this position and I want to jump over to this one, but in reality it might be less money? Or how do I know I guess the question is, how do I know that information so I don't make the move to the position that is actually not the good one for me?
Well, I would think, I'd say one thing to be prepared for is if you're trying to go from one career field to another, especially if you don't have experience in it, be prepared to take a pay cut. You might be going from, hey, I'm an experienced senior manager of accounting, and now I want to become a marketer. Well, you know nothing about marketing. So you may have to start at the bottom again. So be prepared for that. You're really going to have to start working your way up and gain in skill set and experience in order to get the quality salary that you're probably equally looking for. But if you've got 10 years of experience in, accounting and you have zero in marketing, you got to start at the bottom. So be prepared for that. But in terms of your question around salary transparency, so as I mentioned, it's actually becoming freedom of information in terms of go online, research similar positions. LinkedIn's a great resource for this. Google is a great resource. Indeed's a great resource. If you want to know what that position in your market, meaning in your city, is making, it's simple. You go on Google and you type in Los Angeles-based copywriters, Los Angeles-based, or New York-based copywriters, whatever. And those salaries, the job postings, it's going to have the information on there. So you can make sure you put in the right job title and the right city, and you're going to get a general idea of what range. It's always going to be a range because you're never going to know exactly what someone's making, but you're going to get a good idea where they're falling, 70 to 75, 80 to 95, right? You're going to get some kind of ballpark about where that salary range is at.
What are some things that people can do to navigate all of this? Because I think it's probably 50% of your job is your job and what you have to do, the task. And then the other 50% is just interpersonal relationship with 10 to 15, 20 other people. And you have to like know how to talk to this person, how to talk to that person. Like, what are some things that people can keep in mind? So one, they don't go crazy at work. And second, if they want to make those moves and that strategy, they can actually navigate that in not mixing personal friendships with the thing that you're trying to accomplish in your job, so you don't damage a relationship or get into a weird situation where now this person that you're trying to get close to because you're trying to learn about their department and all that, now they could feel like you're kind of using them. Or the same thing, if you're in a department and you're trying to leave that department, you got so close to them, like they feel like they're mentoring you and all of this, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, bye, I want to go over here. Like, what are some tips and strategies that you could talk about in those situations?
Yeah, I would say it's all about timing and about how the delivery and the approach, right? So it is a complicated fine line that you're walking when you start talking about switching over to a different team or a different department. But, the conversations start during those development times at the companies. So most companies, not all, but most companies have an annual review, a 90-day check-in, maybe a mid-year review, something like that, where it's a special time set aside for an employee and a manager to have conversations about their career and their development and how things are going. I think you can lightly start touching on the subject. If you know that eventually you want to be in a different field, have those conversations early. Wait till you're doing well in your role and you've had a good performance review. And after you know you're doing good, it's okay to say, hey, listen, I'm really interested in X, and eventually I'd like to make my way over to that. I know that means at some point that I would be leaving this team or this department, but I would love your support and helping set me up for success to eventually learn more about this and do that. But again, it's all about timing, and it's all about approach and methodology and being honest. You want to be transparent and honest, but you also want to be careful with your delivery on it and make sure it's an appropriate time. Like, you don't want to set them at this unease about, oh, they're just going to bail. They're not going to be focused on this task. They're not going to stay, right? Again, timing, delivery, do well at your job. If you're not doing well at your job and you're not performing in your current role, they're not going to be supportive about that in most cases. They'll probably just exit you out of the company. And so you really want to make sure that you're performing well in your role. You mentioned the balance of like interpersonal relationships and things as well. Every company is different. Some people have a culture, some companies have a culture where it's very close and connected and it's friends, and there's not very clean lines between personal and professional. But I do always recommend trying your best to maintain some kind of boundaries about work and personal and all of that, because it can become complicated. It becomes more complicated for people like me who are in human resources. Like, I have to maintain certain boundaries because obviously when it comes time for disciplinary items or, exiting people out of a company or making hiring decisions, I have to be really careful with making sure that I can be a figure separate from anything that might convolute or create confusion in those situations and in those decisions. But for a lot of people, it's fine to be friends with who you work with and to hang out outside of work. You just need to make sure you're appropriate, and you have I always say this: if you can't put it on the front page of the newspaper and everyone know about it without the embarrassment, don't do it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the philosophy that I live by and that I work
Yeah.
by. You want to make sure that what you're doing is something that you would be fine with everybody knowing.
Yeah, but that's very tricky though, because especially when you use the example of the newspaper, I can think of so many articles or things that could be like this small thing, and then it gets taken into a different context and it becomes this big thing. So I don't know, especially like when we had to do the whole training, like the sexual harassment training and like the co-working relationships and all that. I come from a different world. I come from a different country where we don't have no HR policies or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also on a film set, even though we had to do the training and all that, it's just a bunch of random people that come together to make a movie, and like it's tricky.
Yeah.
So let's get into that side of the conversation for HR. And like you said, I bet it must be really difficult for you keeping the balance of like, you're supposed to be like this cheerleader for everyone to be happy at their job and do well. And at the same time, you are the judge of whether things are being done the way that they have to be done or not. And with the whole movement of Me Too movement and like all the press getting a hold of all of this cases and things that happen in companies, and now it all gets blown out of proportion in some times, or in some other cases you're shining a light on something that maybe before nobody could know, but now with social media it will be immediate, so that's also good. How do people navigate that? And it's just very complicated. It's almost like sometimes I'm afraid of like say whatever. It's like I don't want
Yeah.
to make a mistake.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, especially today, like everything is very, very under a microscope. You do have to be careful. And each, in terms of like, from my perspective, if you're asking, my opinion from the human resources lens, it is so complicated, and you have to take each case by case, because it is truly, each scenario is unique and different. And the thing is, I always try to maintain a neutral party, because you never know all the details, right? Have you ever heard that saying, like, there's this person's side, and then there's the truth, right? So in most cases, there's usually two very clear sides of the story. And of course, like, this is where the investigations come in at, where, we have to get as many facts as we can, with the goal of keeping everybody safe, keeping an environment that's healthy, that is, protective of everybody involved, both parties. And much like the law states, people are assumed to be innocent until they're proven guilty. And so I always try to maintain a neutral head about any kind of situations that pop up that may be questionable or potentially damaging to them or the business or whatever, and get all the facts and then make a decision on how to handle it based on the facts that you have. It's never a bad idea to phone a friend. So I do use outside third-party counsel. So I work with employment attorneys to ask questions when I have questions. I'm always staying up to date on the latest laws, the policies that are coming out, especially in California. We're a very complicated state when it comes to employment. And so, being aware of their advice, there's some great resources online on the California employment sites that talk about the suggested ways to handle certain things that pop up. There's resources readily available to employees. There's mental health services, you name it. So depending on the scenario, making an informed decision based on the facts at hand. And then always, if you need to phone a friend, and I say that jokingly, but if you need to call employment attorney or something like that to get a really good sense of how to navigate it to make sure everyone is safe and that, everything's been handled appropriately, you should do that.
When we think about sexual harassment cases and things of that matter, what are some things that men can do to protect themselves? Because I feel like we are at a huge disadvantage when it comes to that, because by nature, we are more like driven to like look at women and like say things and like joke with people at work. So what are some things that we can do to protect ourselves so we don't find ourselves in a situation where someone is going to have a lawsuit or a case against us? So playing like fair, and what are the boundaries and what are the things that are allowed, so you're not like a robot with no emotions and no like life in you, but at the same time you're respectful and you're not crossing a line.
Yeah, again, I think I want to just first and foremost say like it happens both ways, so like I'm going to speak to both genders in that, women can also sometimes be placing themselves in scenarios that make a male feel uncomfortable. So
Nah,
yeah,
I'm gonna push back on that. I'm
it's
gonna
true.
push back on that.
It's true. It's true. I've seen a lot of different cases. I've seen a lot of
I
different
don't know.
cases.
I don't know.
Yeah,
You will have to give me details on the case and
I'll tell you
see.
later. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because for
But
me, like if a guy is feeling like that, unless they're like touching you and grabbing you and like going
yeah, those
like,
things happen. I mean, those things happen. Married men who have female coworkers who are constantly hitting on them is one example.
if they
So
hit on you, I think that's okay. You just take that as a compliment and you smile and you say something nice back that is respectful. But if you're gonna do a sexual harassment complaint because you're married as a guy and then you have a coworker that is saying nice things to you, come on.
yeah, and this is the HR hat here. I got to maintain neutral. That it happens all over. But the best case, to answer your question, the best thing to do is just be friendly, be kind, but make sure anything you do is reciprocated and wanted, and consent. Consent is very, very, very important. It's fine if coworkers date in most cases, right? There's definitely been scenarios in my career, such as in the military, where dating your coworker is very off the table. You're not allowed to do it. There's a lot of rules around it. But in some places on the civilian side, it's totally fine to date a coworker. So again, going back to consent, is it wanted? Is it appropriate? And when I say appropriate, look at all the factors, like making sure that you're not married or in a relationship where it's going to cause issues, right? You want to make sure it's drama free, and you want to make sure there's consent, right? That and there's no weirdness in terms of like reporting lines. Like you don't want to date your boss. You don't want to date someone that you report to. That's could potentially be an issue. And so making sure it's drama free and there's mutual consent. That is the number one rule to live by. It's not a good idea to hit on coworkers unless it's like expressly like you're very interested in each other and it's been made mutually clear. I would say that's if you're going to do it, I think it's risky territory. I think you should avoid it at all costs. But if you're going to do it, make sure it's mutually wanted and there's consent.
So how can you guarantee or like get closer to having a mutual reciprocated evidence to then show, yeah, like I saw it this way and this is how I felt that the person was also into me? Because I think that's very subjective.
It is subjective, and this is the thing, like there is no way to guarantee ever. If you're trying to date someone that you work with, it's so risky. It's like the biggest risk for you to take. I mean, this is now you're messing with your money, right? You're messing with your food that you put on the table. So I don't recommend doing it at all. I think you really should have a hard boundary for yourself. That's just my recommendation because you can't guarantee it. But if you and that other person strongly feel connected and you genuinely think that there's something more there and that, there's interest to continue the dialogue and, develop some sort of relationship, I would say start off by being friends, right? go get some nachos, you know, go see a movie. Like you just start off being friends.
Nah, no, I disagree on that one. I
And just
disagree on that
just
one.
try it out. Yeah, I mean, that would be the only thing I could recommend because my actual recommendation is don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Like going there is very risky.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more that can go wrong than the things that could go right.
Yeah.
But
There is what 8-9 billion people on the planet. Find someone else.
yeah, that is true. That's good advice.
Yeah, find someone else.
But if you're going to go after that person and pursue them, just ask them out. Like
Yeah.
this whole like be friends stuff, Amy, no, because then you get put in the friend zone. Like
Not
bad advice.
necessarily. I would just say, like, you know, make sure before you go, hey, do you want to go on a date with me in the
Yeah, go
workplace?
like that. Yeah.
I would do it outside of the workplace. Number one, you know,
Yes.
like I would not have romantic conversations at work. I would do them outside of work, which is why I'm saying, you know, grab a coffee, right? See if you guys even like each other, you know, and start off that way. That would be my recommendation. But again, I don't recommend
Yeah,
dating
I
a
understand
coworker.
that. 100% do it
Yeah.
outside of work hours. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Try not to do it. Try to avoid it at all
Yeah.
costs if you can. But just like on the dating side, like I cannot allow you to say, yeah, just be friends. Because for me as a guy, it's like, and this is just me personally,
Yeah.
if you're interested in someone, tell them, hey, I want to take you out to this place. Like, be more direct. And now we're getting outside of HR territory and into like dating
No,
territory.
it's, I mean, I think it's a very real thing. I mean, humans are humans and, you know, sometimes people are attracted to each other and we've seen so many amazing, successful stories of people working together. I mean, you know, obviously the place that we're at,
Yeah, Tom and
our,
Lisa.
our two founders are married and have an amazing, you know, inspirational relationship and they're together. So is it possible? Yes, absolutely. I'm just saying there's risk associated. So if you're risk adverse, like I am, avoid it. But if you're open to that risk and you're confident this is a wanted and consensual thing, go for it, you know, and just be responsible and respectful and kind and all of those things. And you shouldn't have issues, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess if there's any woman listening to the show, which most of the people that watch the show are guys, but if there's any woman, try to find a way to make it clear to the guy that you also like him and that you're
Yeah.
into him. And the opposite goes as well. Try to make it clear that you're not interested. Because I think
Yeah.
that's where the risk comes in.
Yeah.
Where you don't really know whether they are interested or not on both parties. And that's where it gets complicated. But this is a good
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with you. You know, it is really important for people to be able to clearly communicate their interests, which is why consent is so important. However, I will say that, you know, there are people who aren't confident and they don't feel comfortable letting people down or saying no or whatever. So that's where it gets a little muddy is not everyone has the confidence that we have, you know, where I
Yeah.
think we would easily have a conversation, you know, with anybody that we want to have a conversation with that we would be able to advocate for ourselves, but not everyone's there yet with their own confidence level. But I definitely encourage and empower that, and that people should feel confident in their ability to say yes or say no, or, you know, have boundaries or what they want or don't want. But it's just not true for everybody.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious to know what's your take in reinventing yourself. And you have a little bit of experience with this because, like, with your career and your life, you have done multiple things. So, what would you say to that person that maybe is in a spot in their life and their careers where they're just not happy, they're not doing the things that they want to do, and now they want to completely take a 360 spin and then rethink their life completely?
Oh my gosh, this is so funny you're asking me this. I've been thinking about this a lot lately about reinventing one's self. And, you know, we talked a little bit, you know, we haven't really shared it on this episode yet, but, you know, obviously I came from the military. I was in the military from the time I was 17 until I was 31 and long time. And, you know, to go from being in the military to completely transitioning to 100% civilian side, you know, working in the career force on the civilian side, it's a very big transition. And, you know, I think about what brings me joy all the time and what doesn't bring me joy. And I think the people that are struggling the most in life are those that are not seeking joy in what they're doing. And I think if you're in a period of your life where you're stuck and you're not happy and you have that pull to reinvent yourself and you're like, listen, I don't love my life today. I really want to do X. You should do it. you should 100% do it. And I think the first thing you need to do is write a list of what you want to change and like what you want to be and what you want to do. And basically just like a vision board, put together some sort of vision board of what brings you joy and what's pulling at you so you can figure that out. Because once you have it figured out, your North Star, where you want to go, well, now you've got the, step one, which is I want to go here. And you can work backwards from there. Okay, in order to get over here, I need to maybe go to school, or I need to learn this craft, or I need to have conversations with these people that have this experience in their life. Look at who you're surrounding yourself with. Are you surrounding yourself with people that reflect where you want to go? Or are you surrounding yourself with people that are over here where you definitely don't want to be? So surrounding yourself with the right people, having your North Star, having your list of what, your dream is, that's where you're going to, start having the true life transformation. You got to start taking those baby steps and start stepping stone towards what you actually want. You can't get there by doing the stuff that's over here.
Yeah. I think it's just very difficult when you feel trapped. And that's the part that is probably keeping everyone from doing what they really want.
Yeah.
And you're right. You have to be okay with just jumping on and going after it. I like what you're saying about writing everything down and having a plan. I just know from experience, because for me, what happened is I came from a different country. Now I'm trying to pursue a career in film, but then you always have to make money, and then you want to do something that is artistic, but that won't make you the money that you want, and then you end up doing something that is related to what you're doing, but it's not really what you want to do. But then you have bills, you have things, you need money, like you have things that you have to do. So I would love for you to speak on when people feel trapped in that position that they're working at, what can they do to like break out of that? Because it's really nice to think about, oh, I would love to have my vision board and do this and do that, but like the reality of it all is difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in such a special time. Right now, there's a massive shift in careers happening where, I'll just give you an example that'll kind of help articulate what I'm trying to say here. The music industry. If you remember, Macklemore was one of the first artists to self-release an album, right? Where it wasn't under a label. He just did it himself. And now we're in the age of Spotify and, all of these amazing platforms that are enabling artists to just do it themselves. Before it was like they had to compete over labels and all of these other things. Well, now there's YouTube, there's Spotify, there's all these podcast channels, there's every music channel you can think of that where people can literally create content. There's Etsy. If you're someone who likes to whittle wood and, create jewelry and things like that, there's platforms where you can sell your own stuff. So we're in the most empowering time in our lives, in our history, where people can just create and be and do and, have a platform for it. There's communities, you can join a Facebook group, you can join, a local meetup, the chapter, whatever. There's all these incredible resources that are out there at your fingertips. It is hard. It is scary. It is challenging, especially when you have families and kids to pay bills for and things like that to chase your dreams. But I'll tell you right now, life is short. Life is so short. And to not take advantage of your passion and to, cultivate all of these amazing platforms and channels that are out there to get your craft out there into the world and make money from it. Like, for example, what you're doing, right? Like you have a passion for creating content and, you're leveraging YouTube and things like that. If you continue to chase on the things that bring you joy and bring you passion, I promise you the money will come. The money will come. Even if that's, you creating an Upwork account and you doing these editing things on the side or whatever, the money will come. Just keep chasing what makes you happy. I promise it will pay off.
Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. And I guess you just have to be willing to suffer for it. Like it comes down to that. Like I have a lot of people that ask me, well, and how do you do, like you produce for Tom's show and then you have your own show and then you're doing like these music videos and you're doing like you have your family and you still work out and you do this and you do that. And there is no real like magic breakthrough or anything like that. Like I don't have access to any other magical formula other than it's gonna suck and you just have to do it.
But I think right there, what you just said is so wrong. It doesn't have to suck. I think it's all about your mindset, right? Like it's the compound effect. Like you chipping away at something that you love doing. One, you're surrounding yourself with people that are very similar to where you want to go
Hmm.
and doing what you want to do. And you're constantly meeting new people because of that are exactly where you want to be. And eventually you're going to be there, right? So it doesn't have to suck. You can look at it
Well,
and say, oh, it sucks. But
yeah, for me, I think accepting, I disagree with you a little bit. And I get it also comes down to like you are a woman, you have a different personality, you see things different. Like, and I notice like you're always so happy and like everything like that works for you. And I think that is great. And there's a different approach for every person.
yeah.
So I think you have the approach of like enjoy what you're doing and it doesn't suck. For me, that doesn't help me. As weird as that sounds, I almost like to be doing something that feels like hard work. Not, I think the part that is terrible is if I was doing something that I don't love. That is really sad. But if I'm doing something that I love and it sucks, I almost like lean into that and I'm like, yes, it sucks and it's okay. I'm gonna suffer through it. Because it almost gives me that extra push to like I'm doing something hard. I don't know if that makes sense. It's almost like a workout. Like you don't
Yeah.
want to do a workout that is so easy that it's like, oh, la, la, la. I want to do a workout that I'm like, damn, like that was hard.
Yeah, but you feel good. You feel good after, and you feel good doing it. All I would
Yeah.
say, I would challenge you to think on that. Are you locking yourself into misery, or are you allowing yourself the freedom to be excited about what you're doing and happy about what you're doing? Because I think, I mean, just try it. What's the harm in trying it? You know, to change your mindset. Just give it a whirl.
Yeah,
Give
no,
it,
misery
yeah.
definitely not a place where I want to live or spend time thinking about. I guess we're using different words because when I say it sucks, it's just giving people permission to do something that is hard.
Oh, you know, I'm all about doing hard things. I think, I mean, I'll give you an example. I worked 2 jobs while getting my master's degree and my undergraduate degree. You know, I was in the military active duty. It took me 10 years to get my undergraduate degree, which normally would take someone 4 years. It took me 10. You know, I was deploying all over the world. I was, working active duty. I was working multiple jobs, and trying to go to school. That sucked. That was hard. But I really loved the idea that I would get a degree. I mean, I was someone that barely even graduated from high school. Like I loved the idea of getting a degree. So it was hard and it sucked, but so I'm a big proponent of doing hard things.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But it doesn't have to suck while you're doing it. You can revel in the fact that you're chipping away, compound effect. Every minute that you're spending working on your degree, you know what that's going to feel like. When I got my degree, I remember holding it. There was no crowd. I didn't walk across a stage. I didn't get a cap and gown. There was nobody taking my graduation photos. Nobody bought me flowers. I got it in the mail and I cried alone by myself with tears of joy because I fucking did it. I got a degree and I worked hard. I paid for it myself. I earned it. I spent all that 10 years getting it and I did it. And that's what I knew I was going to feel like when I was, doing the late night classes. And no joke, was in Afghanistan doing a math class in a bunker while there was mortar rockets coming at the base. I was trying to get my homework done so I can get it submitted on time. Like that's how committed I was to doing it. So I can do hard things. But it doesn't have to suck. You can revel in the joy of the fact that you get to do this because you know the reward is coming.
That's wonderful. So Amy has joy in her heart for hard
I
things.
do, of
That's
course.
wonderful.
Absolutely. Everything doesn't have to be easy. I prefer the path of least resistance, absolutely the path of least resistance. But, I've been in negative places. I've been in negative mindsets. I've lived the hard way. And I'm just saying there is another way. There is another way. You can find joy in basically anything at any time.
Why did you join the military so young?
That is the question of a century. Part of me, I think that was always destined to be my path. And just for clarity, no one in my family has been military. My parents weren't in the military. In fact, my father was diametrically opposed to the military. In fact, he even said, no daughter of mine will ever join the military. And even more interestingly, I was born and raised in England and I joined the American military. And so that was a big thing for my dad. But so I didn't have amazing parents growing up. I love my parents. They're good people. I have great relationship with them today. But when I was growing up, they were kind of absent. And I got my first job when I was 13. And I used to go to a hair salon after school. I would pour cups of tea, make appointments for people, sweep up hair, clean up. And downstairs from the hair salon, this was in Nottingham, England, at a place called Broadmarsh Shopping Center, there was a military recruiting office for the Royal Army. And I used to see them, every single day dressed in their uniform, pressed, and they just looked like the most incredible humans on the planet. I was an impressionable teenage girl. And I used to see these men in their uniforms and just be so enamored. This guy is gorgeous. He's got all these medals on his chest, this slick haircut, and just be enamored. And so over the course of, I don't know, a year or something, I was talking to them. And, in England, you graduate from school when you're 16. And, they were talking to me about what I was going to do when I graduated from school. And in my dad's mind, I was going to become a hairdresser, right? That's why I was apprenticing after school. And in my mind, I was like, whatever that hot motherfucker's doing, I'm going to go do, right? So I really wanted to join the military, just because of the guys being attractive. And when I did graduate from school, I asked my dad if I could join, and he was like, absolutely not, over my dead body. And I used to come to the US to spend time with my mother, who moved to the US in 95. And so I asked her, I was like, hey, can I join the military? And she's like, sure. So she signed me right up for the military. So that caused some friction between my parents. My dad didn't talk to me for a whole year. He was really upset because not only did I disobey him, I was a traitor to my country. But I joined the American Army. I was a permanent resident at the time. So I too am I can't even say it. I too am an immigrant, much like you.
I'm also an immigrant.
Yeah, I'm also an immigrant. I can't say it. Why can't I say it? Yeah, I'm also an immigrant. And so I joined the military here in the US. I was 17, and I totally hit the jackpot because I could have joined the military. I joined in 2006 at the height of the Afghan-Iraqi wars. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on, but I totally hit the jackpot because they could have said, you're going to be a truck driver, and I would have done it. But they said, you're going to be human resources. I didn't even know what that meant. I was 17. I had never even heard of human resources. And so I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. And they said it's administrative, you're going to learn a lot about rules and regulations, things like that. And off I went. So I went to basic training. I went through job school. I went to an intensive course for human resources specifically, got honor graduate, and here I am, 34, and I've spent my entire career doing human resources, recruiting. I've done some other really, really, really cool things with the military too, like rappel master, air assault, jumping out of helicopters. Obviously, I spent some time over in Afghanistan, so I've done some really, really cool things. But had I not gotten the luck of the draw with human resources, I would be in a very, very different position today. There's a lot of different career fields in the military that wouldn't have set me up for such a great career outside of the military. I could have gone infantry, which those guys are amazing, and like they do some really, really cool things, but it's harder in those cases to find transferable skills outside of the military. So I got lucky.
So when did you go to Afghanistan?
I was in Afghanistan from 2010 to 2012.
And how was that?
It was really, really the hardest period of my life. The absolute hardest period of my life. For multiple reasons. I was young. I was 21 or something, 22. I was really in a weird place of my life where the military, and it still is this way, I think, today, but definitely when I was in my early 20s, not a friendly place for women. It's becoming much more so now, for sure. There's been a lot of work done, but it's still got a long way to go. Now, we were just talking about sexual harassment earlier. I have been so sexually harassed in the military, taken advantage of, abused. Verbally, physically. It's a really, really can be, not for every woman. I definitely don't want to speak for every woman when I'm talking to you about this topic, but it can be a very dangerous place for women. And, it's also a very sexist place. I used to have men openly tell me I should be in the kitchen making sandwiches and not in the military. To this day, when I talk about my military experience, sometimes with civilian men, they'll say, women have no business being in the military, completely discounting the nearly 17 years of military service that I have. And, so it's a very, very sexist place. It's a very controversial topic, women being in the military. the particular experience I had in Afghanistan was a very dark time for me. Obviously, you're in a war zone. I saw women and children in very, very upsetting situations. You're around combat, your fellow soldiers. We had suicides happen on our base while we were there, where people were shooting themselves in their tents. I mean, like, it was a very, very dark time in my life that I am still not 100% over, and I don't know that I ever will be. So I don't wish that on anybody. And I'm so appreciative of the people that are in those scenarios to help create peace where possible, and free people from situations that they need saving from, and protecting our borders, and so many other things. So yeah.
Well, thank you for your service and everything you did in that time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
What do you think is the main thing that you learned for you personally? Not like a big thing about, life and da, 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 like you, Amy. What did you learn from being in that dark place and being able to get out of that?
Yeah, I think it's a lesson that took me many years to learn after I left. Like, I really feel like, even though, I'm 34 now, like, I really feel like I'm still coming out of it almost. That, being in a dark place is a choice. I've talked a lot to you about choosing joy, finding your happiness. That's not just because I'm trying to sprinkle some fairy dust on it and say, life is great, and, put a Band-Aid on it, put some duct tape on it, call it good. It's because I have been in those very, very dark places. And I've learned the thing for me is I have a choice. And it starts first thing in the morning when I open my eyes. I can have a shitty day or I can have a great day. If you get served a shit sandwich, you can eat it with a smile or you can be upset about it, So that's a choice. You get to decide. And just knowing that power, I think, can change your entire life.
Do you miss anything from being in the military?
Of course. I had, I think the people obviously make the experience the best. I had some really cool scenarios happen in my life, some really defining magical moments. For 8 years, just one quick short story, I had for 8 years asked to go to air assault school. And because I was a girl, they wouldn't let me go. Didn't matter that I was fast, strong, capable, passed all the tests. They literally would say, "You're a girl. No, I'm not sending you." And on the 8th year of me asking, I had a leader. His name was Sergeant First Class Aaron Carter. And not to be confused with the singer, but he was like, "You know what? I think you could do it. I absolutely think you could do it." And this was a really pivotal moment for me because it defined how I want to be as a leader for the rest of my life. If I have somebody that comes to me, we were talking about this earlier, if you have a direct report that comes to you and says, "I want to try this with my life or my career or whatever," the only correct answer is to support them to do it. And this guy sent me to the course. And not only did I graduate from that course, which is a very, very hard course to go to, but I ended up going to another course called the Rappel Master course, which I'm the 12th female in the history of the military to graduate from. So very, very low women attendance, very low female graduation. I got an award for it. But I wouldn't have ever been able to do that without that defining moment. And I think I miss that. I miss the challenge. I miss the accomplishments. I really achieved some amazing, life goal stuff, really defining moment type of stuff that it's harder to do that on the civilian side because, you don't get to go to these cool courses and, do these cool things out on the civilian side typically. But that's the stuff I miss is the leadership, the camaraderie, the people. Yeah, there's some really, really cool people there.
So how do you find now that challenge to get up and go after something that big? Because you now have to reinvent that in your life, and now you have to find a new helicopter to jump off or a new mountain to go after. How do you think through that now?
So earlier we talked about vision board. So I think that's something you should do regularly in your life. What's next? Okay, you jumped out of a helicopter, you went skydiving.
So what's on your new vision board?
My vision board, yeah. So I started a company, and I am, I'm building a website, and I drive around LA and I point at really big houses and I say, I want that. And those things go on my list. I want a certain lifestyle. I want to reach certain educational goals. Like I'm right now in several educational courses that I take after I leave my office, and so friendships I want to build, communities I want to engage with. There's a ton of stuff on there. What kind of parent do I want to be? What kind of animals do I want to have? Being a good dog mom. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that's on the vision board, and I think we talked about reinventing ourselves. Constantly reinventing myself. What do I want to do next? Who do I want to be? Even little things like, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of friend do I want to be? I am very much a work in progress. I'm very much under construction. I don't think that never should stop. There is no end point, and I think once you realize there's no end, you just can keep defining yourself, keep reinventing yourself, keep improving. There's always something to be, tinkered at.
What is something that is really difficult for you to change that is part of that work in progress thing that you're thinking about?
For myself,
Yeah.
I have a short fuse, and it's not something I love about myself.
That makes two of us.
Yeah, yeah. And so I would say that's my number one. That's like my Achilles heel. That's the one thing that, in terms of like controlling myself, controlling my emotions, controlling my experience, and how I want to show up, how I want to be perceived, what kind of friend I want to be, all of those things. That's my one thing I'm working on right now. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny because I have the same issue. Like I can get angry really quickly.
Yeah.
I think it's just when I see a disconnect between what I perceive to be real or like a core belief or just like facts, and then someone not seeing that is very difficult for me.
Yeah.
And for some reason, like my emotions run hot. Like I'm Cuban, so it's a little bit of that, but not really because my brother is so chill. He's so calm.
Yeah.
But I get like very revved up with that. So that's something that I'm working through.
Yeah.
Trying to think, how can I control my emotions? Because you end up losing, even if you're right.
Yeah. It's true.
You end up losing in the end.
Yeah. It's so true.
Especially when you're working with other people. But I've never seen you get mad.
Yeah, it's in there. It's in there. Yeah, a few people have seen it. Yeah, it's not something I'm proud of. It's definitely, it's like the one area of me where I'm like, that needs a little love, that needs a little work. So, but I'm constantly working on it, constantly chipping away at like, how do I do better at this? Because, if I feel a certain way, that doesn't mean I want everyone to know that I feel a certain way. And so, it's mindset starting in the morning, if this happens, knowing how you want to show up, being able to breathe through it. I like to practice with myself in the car because I get the most worked up driving, the road rage stuff.
Really?
So I practice in the car. Yeah. Breathe through it. That's like how I challenge myself to get better is in
I
the
have
car.
zero road rage.
I have that's like my Achilles heel right there.
That's hilarious.
Achilles
But
heel,
why you
Achilles
drive
heel.
that big car? Like you. Like,
That's why I
crush
drive the
into-
big car. I'm like, get
You
out
can
of my
crush
way.
anyone.
Yeah, get out of my way.
I'm
yeah.
probably the one getting in your way. I like to drive fast and swerve and like.
Oh, I don't mind the people that are swerving or driving fast. As long as you're like getting out of my way. Awesome. For me, it's the people on their cell phones. I'm like, get out of the way. Yeah.
It's funny. So how do you find LA, like living here? How long have you lived here now?
2.5 years.
So tell me about that experience, because
Yeah.
you're a girl from London, comes to America, then you go away in the military, and now you're here in LA. How is that?
Yeah, so my mother moved to the U.S. in 95, 96. She's from Sheffield. My dad's from Nottingham. And I went back and forth between my mom and my dad. And when I did finally join the military, I was 17. I was all over the place. I went to Germany, Afghanistan. I was in Kuwait for a little bit, Kyrgyzstan. I was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Fort Dix, New Jersey, Arkansas, just all over the place. And I had a long military stint in Portland, Oregon. So I spent a lot of time there. And when I started leaving the military, and I went to the career force externally, I started working at Nike. That was my first civilian job outside of the military. And that was in Portland. And, I did a couple other things, ended up coming down to LA because I had a job at Red Bull, and they had a position open at their Santa Monica location. So I moved down here. And that was how I came down to LA. But I'd always wanted to be here. The sun. And ever since I was like 16, I wanted to come to LA. I was very involved in music, as a teenager. And I'd visited a few times on some music stuff, and wanted to come out here permanently. And it just happened. It was definitely meant to be.
Now, what do you think about working with creatives and people in the film and TV and actors and models and this and that? Like, teach me some tricks and tips to be able to work well with those people.
Yeah. So, I think I love it, number one, because
Yeah, we're the coolest people ever.
the creative space is the best space in the planet. I think the creatives are the happiest people on the planet. I think that is like what we're supposed to do as a human species, is to be creative. And I think it's the people that are not super happy. And this may be me being very judgmental, and I am. If you're not a creative, you are the type of people that are upset and don't really love their lives. The creatives are the happiest. They are really truly being like divine creatures, like to create.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I would say 80% of the creatives are depressed 60 to 70% of the time.
They don't have to be. That's a choice.
No, I'm just saying they are.
Yeah.
You just don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, like tips and tricks for working with creatives, you just gotta let them be creative. Let them do their thing. They're emotional creatures. We
Yeah.
are emotional creatures. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Working in this industry is very tricky because I
it is.
think not having the stability, the structure, and all that is weird. But at the same time, you almost like don't want to have that. Like it's
Yeah.
very difficult. At least for me, it's very difficult.
Yeah, the tension between structure and creativity is very, very tense. But I think this is where it's so key to have like a really good network of diverse minds. Like, you don't want to have groupthink where you're all creatives. I think it's so important to have people that are more analytical, data driven, structured, business oriented, right? There's a balance. A lot of people will sequester themselves into like-minded individuals, and they're so scared to be in settings where there's opinions that differ from their own. That is bad. That is bad. It's important to surround yourself with people that have differences of opinions. For case in point, if you're trying to build a brand, if you're trying to build a business, if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you want a huge group of creatives and then some people that can make your dreams scalable, right? Someone who's good with numbers, someone who's good with taxes, someone who's good with human resources, right? Like, you want those things in place to be able to scale your businesses and your ideas. So you better make friends with the people that aren't creatives, so that they can help you reach your potential. You got to have balance in everything.
Yeah. Now, how do you advise that people partner up when you do need someone that runs numbers and operations and logistics and someone that is super creative? What is the formula to make that work? 'Cause it's almost like this dance where you need both things, and like I think that's one of the most difficult things to accomplish when you have a company and a team, being able to glue those people together.
Yeah, I think one, being able to get along create good relationships with people that are different to you, right? I think that's step one. But create a community, and there's a lot of really great resources out there for that. I'll give you an example. There's a group called Forward Female here in LA. This is just one group. There's millions out there, and it's basically like a group for women entrepreneurs. And within that group, there's all kinds of people and resources that do different things. So there's women that are marketers, there's women that are sales, there's women that are finance, there's like all the different things that you would need to create a great business. And it's a networking thing. So you can go to these coffee moments and, meet other women that are in different areas of business that you guys can come together and create together, businesses, strategies, ideas, whatever. So networking is so important. There's chapters, there's groups, there's a entrepreneur group. Oh gosh, what's it called? I forget. But there's groups that you can join. So that's the easiest way to do it. There's Facebook groups. There's Craigslist groups. There's all kinds of stuff. So networking, get on Google, find some stuff to help you be exposed to other people, but also find a great recruiter. Go on a job board if you're hiring. If you need to hire like a COO to manage your operations, so you can be an on-camera talent or a model or creative or whatever. You're some kind of entertainment figure, and you need someone to kind of run your business. Get someone who's good at that. find someone who's an expert in that space. If you need a good lawyer, you need a good doctor, whatever it is, like, find someone to help
Yeah.
to bring on board.
Have a podcast and then come and interview the people. So like that helps a lot.
Yeah.
That has been my strongest path to networking, has been this show.
Yeah.
Is there something interesting that happens when you have a deep conversation with someone for an extended period of time with no like interruptions?
Yeah.
So as you were talking about this is something that I'm really curious about, because I love networking, but I don't think of it as networking in that sense. I just like to have friends and relationships. So what's your take on that? Because you're very good at connecting with a bunch of people. You have connected me with some amazing people. So what's your approach to networking?
Good question. I would say authenticity, number one. You should not have an ulterior motive when you're trying to be a connector of people. You should just be genuine about it, build your network. I go out a lot. I go to networking events, I go to meetups, right? And I'm just meeting people all the time. And if in that experience you find a moment where you're like, "Oh my gosh, you need to connect."
Yeah,
or
that's the best. That's the
just be
best.
authentic about it. I think that is the key. You cannot try to force, a square peg into a round hole, and let it be if it doesn't happen, right? Make the introduction. Let's say that there's a job opening, right? And you're like, this person needs a job. I know you have a job open. Make the introduction and just say, I'll let you guys, go to it. Let me introduce, swap phone numbers, but then let them, you don't want to force it, because then you could ruin the relationship with either of them. But that's kind of how I do it. As I just, I'm constantly meeting people, listening, seeking to understand, right? What are you looking for? What are your needs? How can I help you reach your goals? How can I help you on your mission to have an amazing podcast? Like if there's something that will tee you up or help you or the other person be more successful, I love introducing people. I think that's why I love being like a recruiter, and connecting people, and why I'm building an entire business around just helping people connect.
Do you have any like advanced systems to do follow-ups and keep track of all of these relationships? Because I think that's where it gets into like next level stuff.
Yeah, I'm actually building a platform right now. So I have a website under construction at the very moment that we're speaking. It should be ready next week. But I literally am going to, it's basically two journeys. So if you're a company, click here. If you're talent of any kind, click here. And it's basically like a sign up list where you can register for emails, job alerts, opportunity alerts, meetup alerts, and it'll put you in my system, and you can attach a resume or, comp card or whatever you want, headshots, whatever. You can put all your stuff in there, and then I'll have a database on the backside that, if I'm looking for X, I'll type it in. And if you've opted in, you'll pop up and I'll contact you. And likewise for the company, if they're looking for something, or, if somebody's just trying to find something, whether it's somebody or a resource or a skill, I'll have it in my database. Yeah.
But in your day-to-day regular like personal life, do you have any way of categorizing or systematizing these relationships, or it's just like a natural thing that happens? You meet this person and then you're like, oh, light bulb, they should meet this other person.
In most cases, it happens naturally, but I definitely leverage like my iPhone in the section where you can create a contact, and there's like a notes section. I will definitely put notes like, this person's really good at podcasting, or this person's really good at makeup. This person's really good at singing, dancing. I've literally had requests from really amazing influencers that are throwing a birthday party, and they reach out to me and they'll say, do you know anybody who does aerial performance work? I just so happen to do, like in my contact list, I just do a search for aerial performer, because I put a note in there about what they do, and boom, there you go. You've got 3 people that you can reach out and call. So that's what I do. I just leverage my iPhone and just contacts for everybody.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, talking about influencers and people working in that side of things, very difficult industry. Everyone thinks that everyone is making a shit ton of money when they're not. Most people are struggling. So if we could talk to those people right now, what would be some advice that you would give them so they can connect with people who are running brands and teams that are looking to do promotions and things like that? How can we connect the two?
Yeah. So, we're actually in such a cool day and age right now, because we're beyond, you're around the same age as me. And so we're beyond the stage of like, what is social media? And now we're into the stage of like, people have entire careers in social. And, when you're interested in growing your brand and you're an influencer and you want to start doing brand deals and things like that, the number one easiest place to go for that is an agency, because there's now agencies that have their entire job be to connect brands with influencers. I would also make sure that you have yourself set up for success, like build your foundation, build your roots. There's systems out there like Grin. There's a lot of software tools, things like that, that are available online that will review your account to make sure it's authentic, that your followers are legit, your engagement level is worth it, right? Because people can buy 1 million followers for $1,000, right? And so the first place the brands are going to go is to check that your followers are actually engaging with your content to make it worth it. You can't just have a high follower count. You need to be on brand for the brands that you're looking for. So if you're looking to work with Toys R Us, you can't be a lingerie model, right? You need to match the brands that you're trying to partner with. Number one, your engagement rate needs to be there to, make it worth their time, money, energy to partner with you. But connect with an agency. Most of the agencies are actively looking for true, proper influencers with the right brand, the right style, to connect them with the brands, and they get paid for it. So that's the easiest way to go about it.
At what point do you think that you should start thinking about that? Because I think a lot of people are in two camps. They either want to get the brand deal and the agency way too soon when you don't have an audience yet, or they already have a good audience, but they don't think that they're worth of the attention of a brand. So they spend months and sometimes years with a good audience that is engaged, and they're looking at that fake account that has 1 million followers and a couple brand deals, and they think those people are crushing it, so they're not worth it. So at what point is it the right time to go and approach an agency? And also, what are some things you could do so the agency doesn't take advantage of you? Because I think that's also a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're in a really cool, awesome time. Research, right? There's a lot of tools online. There's articles, there's YouTube videos about this exact subject. There's so much information online about how to be successful in securing a brand deal, what things you should be looking out for. It should feel like a good deal for everybody. You should be getting a good percentage or a good payout, or, a good schedule of getting paid out. Because sometimes people lock themselves into deals where, they rack up all this money for for a company, and then they don't ever get a payout. It takes them 3-6 months of arguing with them to get the payout. So having those things set up in place is really important. And you can do that by working with, if you don't have the resources for a lawyer, you can do that usually by looking at articles online, and there's usually some great resources. But if you have the ability to work with a lawyer, there's entertainment lawyers out there that are able to help make sure your contracts are, well structured. It's usually 30 minutes of a lawyer's time to review a contract and, make sure it's got your best interests covered. So that's always an option, to talk to an entertainment lawyer, especially if you're doing it as a full-time career. It's worth the investment. Set it up a couple times, you kind of get the training, you know what to look for yourself. But in terms of the timing, I think it's never a bad time to research. So even now, if you have 0 followers and you're just interested, go research, set yourself up for success. I mean, a lot of this information is available to you free online right now.
Now, let's touch a little bit, Amy, on personal brand. This is something that I'm really passionate about. One, because I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy being on social media. I think social media is one of the best things that has ever existed. And I'm tired of people just bashing on social media and saying that it's terrible, that it's just a distraction, that it's this and that. Like, I believe that if you're just watching cat videos all day long, you're just not using it right.
Yeah.
But that's not that company or that social media's fault. But also, I see a lot of people that are just not utilizing it well. And as a professional or someone who's an entrepreneur or someone who wants to be in any kind of industry, it's super important that their IG needs to be popping, So like, what are some tips that you have on that, and what's your take on social media, and how do you kind of use it with the mix of like your personal touch, but also thinking about it professionally?
So earlier we talked about a North Star. I think in order for you to set your own personal brand up for success, you got to have a North Star. So how to get there is, who do you like, right? Like, who do you follow on Instagram? Who are you trying to be like? And follow people that are like that. So as an example, if you love the Alex Hermosis of the world, follow him, follow people like him. What are they wearing? What are they talking about? How are they showing up? How do you authentically add to that conversation? What can you bring to the table? What is your unique angle on all of that you can bring to the table, and start working towards that? You get these people who want to be influential, confident, strong women, but yet they're on OnlyFans and they're dressing inappropriately and they're, attracting like a very different audience than what they're trying to do. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just highlighting sometimes there's like a total difference in what someone wants for themselves, the respect level they want from themselves, and what they're doing. So, aligning with your North Star, I think, is super, super critical. You need to basically sit down, what do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What do you want people to think about or associate you with when they see your content? And start, surrounding yourself with that. Clothing, style, podcasts, books, whatever it's going to take to get you to align with that North Star. So, the vision board work is really critical. It's step one in almost anything you do.
Now, how do you navigate the whole social media thing with like being a female, being a beautiful woman, and you're putting your pictures, but you're also trying to grow a brand? And I know that that must be really difficult because for us guys, a lot of the times I see, like, I work with a lot of models and actresses, and I see their pages, and then whenever we get to talk about like algorithm and social strategy and like content strategy, like my producer brain comes in and I'm like, if you keep doing this, you are gonna get more followers. But those dudes are just there because they want to look at a beautiful woman. You're not gonna be able to monetize that. You're not gonna turn that into a product. There's nothing you can sell to a guy that just wants to look at you being sexy, other than an OnlyFans account or like some type of product for a dude. So that puts you as a female and a professional in a kind of like a tough spot where I don't think guys have the same issue. And at the same time, we're always judging women of how they do their social media. So it's this weird territory of like sometimes, and this is funny, like this happens with friends where like I would be like, you should meet this girl that I know. I think you guys would be great. And then I show them the Instagram account of the girl, and they're put off by the fact that she has so many pictures that she looks way too beautiful. And it's weird, like the guy will be turned off by that when you're thinking about having a relationship with that woman. But at the same time, the most engagement, the more followers, the more views, you would always get it when you, as a beautiful woman, are using your beauty to also make it part of your brand. So how do you think about that? And maybe a different perspective, because me seeing it as a guy, like I don't understand all of the psychology and everything that goes behind this. So I'm curious to hear your take on that.
That's an interesting and a tough one. I think I'm still figuring it out myself, to be honest with you. 20-year-old Amy, would have like wanted to be wanted, wanted to, get the validation of the likes, the comments, the men, whatever. Like 34-year-old Amy, like I'm just myself personally. I'm in a place where like I really value like myself as a professional and what the value is and the knowledge and the experience I bring to the table professionally. So I'm less focused on like taking sexy photos and things like that. Like I enjoy I have like a lot of girlfriends that are in fashion, et cetera. So I've worked for fashion companies. So I love like modeling and fashion and like, doing photo shoots and things like that. But for me, I'm much more focused on what I can add professionally to the table. So I don't consider myself an influencer. I don't consider myself a model. I don't consider myself, like a figure online that is putting content out specifically to attract males. I'm right now focused on building content that is going to help women, find jobs, and young men entering the career force land an internship, and people transitioning from the military to the civilian career force, restructure their resumes in a way that's going to be powerful. I want to help people at this point. So that's my focus. But it's taken me a long time to figure that out, where it's very easy to get trapped in the validation loop of needing to, like, it's a dopamine hit, right? Like when you're posting an image and, oh, this one gets a lot of traction. I have 100% noticed my engagement rate is different and better when I post an image that is makeup done, hair done, an outfit on point, and I'm, styled a certain way, to, me just posting something that is, business related. There's a big difference. And so, that's something to think through, but I haven't figured it out 100% yet myself. I'm very, very much into the, finding my niche, and what I want and the stuff that brings attraction. It's two very different things. Although I do firmly believe in, if you build it and you build it authentically, people will come. So, I'm focused on building my business stuff right now. And I'm confident my content will speak to someone that needs it.
Yeah, it's very tricky to navigate that. And I also think people need to take advantage of that for their profession. I don't know if the answer is to have like two separate accounts or like the actual tactics of how to do it.
Yeah.
it's something I'm trying to figure that out too. Because with my and right now at this exact moment when we're filming this, I'm in a period of like till for the next few months, I'm putting aside like Instagram and I'm not gonna pay too much attention to it. And I'm focusing on YouTube, focusing on the show and trying to do the best that I can to grow this one platform because it's the hardest one, but it's the one with the most revenue and the most like deep connection with people. But yeah, I don't know the answer. That's I think why I wanted to talk to you.
I mean, I think you're in such an amazing position. And the really cool thing is you have the best professional resources at your fingertips. You've got great people surrounding you. You've got, the incredible opportunity to do A/B testing. I mean, obviously TikTok is blowing up right now, and that's another amazing platform to feed you into, the longer form stuff. I
Yeah,
mean,
I haven't gotten into TikTok yet.
I
Just
can
don't
sense
enjoy it.
the energy in the room, sensing that you need to get into TikTok. If you're not already there, you should try
I
that.
do need to get into it. The problem is that I just dislike the platform because it.
But wait. Earlier in the show, we were talking about doing hard things.
You're right.
Do the hard thing. Yeah, lean in, lean in.
You're right. It's not that is. It's not that it's hard. It's unpleasant. In a. It's almost like an aesthetic thing. I do not like that when I open the app, it's forcing me to see something that I don't want to. That is so annoying. I know that it gets them views. I guess for the average person, that is okay, and they get trapped
You
into
just
that.
need to get a social media manager, and then you don't have to worry about it. They can do it for you.
You're right. So I do have people that create a lot of the content for me, so I just go in and post.
Yeah.
I do know that if you want to grow on that, if you want to grow on that platform, you need to be honest so you kind of understand it. With that one, it's just weird. Like on my TikTok page, I only follow my brother because I don't want to see anything. And then when I open the stupid app, it shows me videos of people that I don't even follow.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I have beef with that, but you're right. I need to get someone and need to get onto that.
Yeah. You need to maintain too some connection to some teenagers. You got to stay at the forefront of what's
Yeah,
trending.
the funny thing is that I was on TikTok back when it was Musically, and I loved it. I used to do all the videos with my son.
Yeah.
I was really into it. I did a
Yeah.
lot of videos, and I have some friends that have massive accounts. Like Candy Can has like 15, 16 million followers. My other friend Devon had like, he was 1 million followers like way at the beginning, and I was like part of that with him, like seeing him grow. And like I met him when he was like 30K followers and then all the way to 1 million. So like I know the power of the app. It's just you also need to decide when you can actually focus on something. And like in my case right now, I'm focused on this long form piece.
Yeah.
But you're 100% right. I need to get someone to help me with that part.
Well, I think every single, major influencer, you have a very unique platform because, for the show that you work on, you get access 2, 3, 4 times a week to some of the biggest influencers in the world. And I think
But I don't like
you could
this is another
easily
thing.
ask before you leave, can I ask one question? That's what you should say. Before you leave, can I ask one question? What's the secret? Like what's one tip you can give to me about your social? How do you?
Well, the thing is that with the social, I mean, I know the,
Yeah.
I know the secret and the tip. It just, it requires a team because you're competing with people that are putting in
Yeah.
a full-fledged team, putting 3 to 5 pieces of content a day, and they just win by volume and
Yeah.
they just overtake. Uh, I don't know. With that, it's a little bit tricky. Like with the show that we work on, like with the guests, and this is something interesting that I guess you learn when you're on set and around very famous people. Like you and I, we are around very famous people every week, and it's almost like I don't want to even ask them anything. I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah, I guess I have less shame. I'm like,
It's not
yeah.
a shame. Like I'm not ashamed. Like
No, I don't think you're ashamed. I just mean I'm just like I'm gonna ask you a question.
you ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I much rather have a conversation with someone that I feel that we are in the same timeline in our movie than to try to put this other person in a pedestal because they are famous or whatever and like try to get the secret from them. Like it just doesn't, I'm not inclined to do it.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, it's not that I'm discounting what they do or who they are, is that I almost understand that at the level that they are also looking to have conversations with people at their level.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when is your podcast coming out?
I know. I need to do one, huh? I would love to. You know, we were talking about like your personal brand. I'm honing, I'm almost there. I think I'm starting to get, you know, a North Star, like my list of what I want to focus on, the niches and all of that. That is quickly coming finally to fruition. I've been thinking about it for a long
Yeah.
time, but I've been really fortunate to have people like yourself, you know, to ask questions to and help me hone in on, you know, because I've obviously got such a broad variety of things that directions I could have gone. And I think I'm finally getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm ready. You know, like I'm ready to start picking people to have on the show and, you know,
Hmm.
to get it produced and to do it. I think I'm almost
Yeah.
there.
I think the sad thing is that you're going to have to niche down to grow,
Yeah.
but you have like having this conversation now. I think this is the first time that we get to talk. Like we have been talking for a good while right
Yeah.
now. You have a large breadth of things that you could cover, and because of the algorithm and all that, you're going to have to like focus on only one thing
Yeah.
if you want to grow fast. But it would be interesting if you could, maybe I challenge you, if you could think about building your brand in a wider way, even though it will require longer time for you to see high view counts and high follow count and all that. But I think there's more to you than just thinking about recruiting and HR and all that, because the way that you think
Yeah.
about things and with your life experiences and all that, it would be interesting to see you have like a wider show.
Yeah, you know, I just had a good friend tell me recently, it doesn't have to be done. Sorry, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. And so that has really stuck with me. So that's why I'm kind of like, okay, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it and throw something spaghetti up against the wall and see if it sticks, you know, and just try things out. So I'm really inspired right now. I'm the most inspired I've ever been in my life right now. You know, I think fear has held me back for a long time, shame, you know, not feeling worthy. You know, I look up to so many people around me and never thought that I could be like, I'm sitting here on a podcast right now, right? Like having the confidence to even do it. It takes guts, you know, to like put yourself out there and to know when you go on a show, you might get eaten alive, you might get negative comments. And I've had a couple really weird, random experiences that almost set me back. Like, do I really want to put myself out there and do it? And the thing is, like, you could be the coolest person in the world. You could be the most awesome, loving, nice person in the world. Someone's going to have something negative to say. Just do it. And so I'm in that point right now where I'm ready to do my own show. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see everything that you go out and do and conquer.
Thank
And
you.
I'm really grateful that you spent some time with us today talking about all of this. So
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you. I'm really grateful for your time and for sharing your show with me. And we obviously get to work together a lot, and so it's fun to sit down and actually have a conversation. It's very cool.
Well, guys, thank you so much for checking out this interview. I hope you have some good tips. And if you can send this episode to a friend, I'm sure they're going to love it. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.